Oil is calm. The world is not $60 a barrel. Screens are green, markets are breathing easy. But Venezuela just lost its president. And the US didn't whisper. It declared total access, not partnership, not aid, total access to oil, total access to infrastructure, total access to the future of a sovereign country. That sentence matters more than any price chart. Because when power talks like this, it's not reacting to a crisis. It's defining a new rule. Run the country, control the energy, rebuild it, profit later. And here's the shock. The market barely blinked. That silence should worry you. Because calm markets during political rupture usually mean one thing. The system has already adapted. If this moment feels bigger than Venezuela, trust that instinct. Stay with me. If this analysis sharpens how you see the world, follow the channel. Next, we need to slow down and ask the real question. What does total access actually unlock? Let's strip this down to the core. This is not about removing a dictator. That part is easy to say, harder to explain. This is about leverage. The US says it does not want troops on the ground. It does not want full nation building. It does not even promise elections. Instead, it wants alignment. Stop the flow of drugs, open the energy system, hand over access to oil infrastructure, rebuild it, stabilize supply. Run the country does not mean flying a new flag. It means deciding the rules behind the curtain. Who controls energy contracts? Who approves investment? Who benefits first from recovery? And notice the timing. This happens in a world already swimming in oil. Oversupply, soft prices, thin margins, which tells you something important. This is not urgency. It's positioning. Venezuela becomes a long-term asset, not a short-term rescue. But here's where it gets dangerous. Because power without a transition plan creates a vacuum. And vacuums never stay empty. Next, we need to look backward. Because this moment didn't appear overnight. It's the end of a long cycle. To understand this moment, you have to zoom out. Venezuela didn't collapse overnight. It eroded slowly. Year by year, sanctions tightened, production fell, infrastructure decayed, capital fled, the oil stayed underground, the capacity did not. For years, Venezuela sat on the world's largest proven reserves and produced less and less. A paradox, a warning sign. Once sanctions hit, the system stopped breathing, refineries aged, pipelines broke, talent left. What remained was potential without machinery. And that's the key. In global politics, unused potential attracts power, not sympathy, power. Because energy isn't just fuel, it's leverage across decades. The US didn't move when Venezuela was strong. It moved when Venezuela was hollowed out. That's the cycle. Pressure, decay, intervention. Not with tanks first, with access. And when access arrives before stability, history tells us one thing. The first crisis is never the last. In the next part, we hit the first real shock. The moment this theory meets reality, then the shock hits. Not in Caracas, on the screens, oil swings, up, down, then sideways. At first, traders panic. A captured president, a military incursion, supply risk. But then something strange happens. They look deeper and they calm down. Because Venezuela, despite everything you hear, is not driving today's oil market. It holds the largest reserves, but supplies only a fraction of global output. Years of decline did that. Sanctions did that. Decay did that. So the crisis explodes politically, but economically, it lands softly. That's the first warning sign. When a geopolitical earthquake barely moves markets, it means expectations were already low. It means the damage was priced in long ago. And that creates a perverse incentive. You can intervene, restructure, rebuild without triggering immediate global pain, gold jumps, silver surges, oil shrugs. If you're following this so far, stay with me. This is where surface stability hides deeper risk, because when markets stay calm, leaders feel freer to push further. And that brings us to what really matters: the system behind the story. Here's the part most people miss. This isn't chaos, it's design. The mechanism is simple, and that's why it's powerful. You don't occupy the country. You occupy the system: energy infrastructure, investment rules, security guarantees. You leave the flag where it is, but you move the levers. Whoever governs Venezuela next does not need to agree with Washington. They just need to comply. Comply on oil access. Comply on contracts. Comply on strategic alignment. That's the new model. No elections required. No nation-building speeches. Just conditional recovery. And notice who benefits first: U.S. oil companies, capital with patience, institutions that can wait 5 to 8 years. For Venezuela, this creates a trap: rebuild without sovereignty, or keep sovereignty without recovery. And for the world, it sends a message: this is not intervention for ideals. It's intervention for systems. Once that line is crossed, it's hard to uncross it, because the next crisis doesn't need troops. It just needs permission. And permission is easier to extract when a country is already broken. Next, we reach the second escalation: the moment when signals turn global. Then the signal travels fast. It jumps borders. It jumps continents. It lands in places that were not in the headlines. Greenland, Taiwan, Ukraine, not as targets, as tests. When the US talks about total access in Venezuela, others listen for the subtext. What will Washington tolerate? And what will it ignore? Russia hears flexibility. China hears optionality. Smaller states hear vulnerability. This is the second crisis. Not a single explosion, but a chain reaction, because if power is now exercised through access instead of occupation, then every strategic asset becomes negotiable. Energy, shipping lanes, critical minerals, geography itself, markets still hold steady. That's the danger. Calm markets validate bold moves. They reward escalation. And suddenly, geopolitics stops being about borders. It becomes about balance sheets. Who can afford to wait? Who can absorb risk? Who can turn instability into leverage? This is no longer a unipolar world. It's a transactional one. And transactions don't need trust. They need advantage. Next, we come back to the people, because systems always land somewhere. Now, bring this down to street level, because while systems shift quietly, people feel it loudly. If you live in Venezuela, this moment is not abstract. It's not theory, it's daily life. You hear promises of rebuilding. You hear billions mentioned. You hear opportunity. But you also hear silence. No clear transition, no clear elections, no clear future. You watch power change hands above you, and you wonder if it'll ever reach you. Jobs may come back. Slowly, years from now, but prices move now. Uncertainty moves now. Fear moves now. And here's the cruel part. When oil becomes the priority, people become secondary. When access comes first, dignity waits. You are told to be patient, to trust the process, to endure a little longer. If this story makes you uncomfortable, it should, because this is where geopolitics becomes personal. If you want more stories that center people, not just power, follow this channel. Your attention keeps these conversations alive. Next, we zoom back out, because Venezuela is no longer just Venezuela. Zoom out again. This is no longer a local story. It's a global signal. Venezuela sits inside multiple systems at once. Energy, debt, geopolitics. Oil markets absorb the shock because oversupply dominates because expectations were low, but finance reacts differently. Defaulted bonds start to move. 33 cents on the dollar. Some whisper 60. That's not optimism. That's a bet. A bet that access unlocks recovery. A bet that stability follows control. A bet that politics bends to capital. And beyond markets, governments recalibrate. Allies watch carefully. Adversaries take notes. Because if access replaces sovereignty, then power no longer needs permission. It needs opportunity. OPEC watches supply discipline weaken. Europe watches norms erode. Asia watches precedents form. This is how global order shifts. Not with declarations, with deals, quiet, incremental, profitable. And once the logic spreads, it doesn't stop at oil. It moves to minerals, to shipping routes, to strategic land. The world doesn't fracture overnight. It slides. Next, we face the hardest question. Where does this road lead? So what comes next? There are three paths. None are clean. First, the best case. Access leads to stability. Investment follows. Oil infrastructure slowly recovers. 5 years, maybe 8. Production rise. Debt gets restructured. People see jobs return. Sovereignty is thinner, but daily life improves. The system holds. Second, the middle path. Access exists, but legitimacy does not. Delcy Rodriguez governs on borrowed time. The regime fractures. Compliance replaces consent. Investment hesitates. Violence flares. Recovery stalls. Oil moves. People don't. The country survives, but it does not heal. Then the worst case. No transition. No unity. No control. Power vacuums expand. Factions compete. The US gets pulled in deeper than planned. Markets react late. Very late. Oil spikes. Risk explodes. The contained crisis breaks containment. Here's the truth. All three futures depend on the same variable. Not oil. Not money. Legitimacy. Without it, access buys time. Not stability. And systems built on time alone always crack. One final step remains. The meaning of this moment. So here's the insight you should carry with you. This was never just about Venezuela. It was a demonstration. Power no longer needs to conquer. It needs to connect to pipelines, to contracts, to leverage. Total access is the new doctrine. Quiet, transactional, efficient. Markets understand it. That's why they stayed calm. But people live with the consequences. Long after the cameras leave, long after prices settle, the danger is not collapse. It's normalization. A world where sovereignty is conditional, where democracy is optional, where recovery comes with strings you cannot see until they tighten. If you felt something shift while listening to this, that's because it did. This is the world forming in front of us. Not tomorrow, now. If you want the next video where we track how this logic spreads beyond oil, beyond Venezuela, subscribe. Share this with someone who thinks geopolitics doesn't affect them, because it already does. And the next total access moment will not ask for permission.